Hi teachers, and welcome to this week's teacher training. We're going to be continuing on our series of now how to be better teachers, and we want to today specifically focus on how can I be more effective if I'm teaching online, whether it be over Zoom or Google Meet or any type of video conference platform. How can I teach effectively, and what are a few of the what are the best practices as we are teaching? So let me get my face out of the way here, and we've got our typical Zoom classroom set up. We have Brother Matheson, who's we've invited him to be there so that I can use it as a demonstration. And so first and foremost, let's talk about screen setup. There's Troy. Thanks so much again, Troy. So we go to View. Up in the upper right-hand corner, I like to use Gallery View. The reason I use Gallery View is because it makes everybody's window the same size. No matter what you do with your screen, it's always the same size. If you have 20 or if you have 2, it's always the same size. So let me show you what I do with my screen. So I grab it on the right edge and I minimize it just slightly because I want my lesson plan that I have on just a typical Word document. I will shrink this down to the smallest it can be over to one side, and then I will align it just like this. That way I have a lesson plan on the right hand of my screen that is ready and accessible for me to use that my students can't see. The second thing I like to do is I go over here to More and I click on Chat. That sets up my chat room window just to the right of my screen. And so I have my students, I have my chat window, and I have my lesson plan. The reason I do it this way is because I don't like using PowerPoint. I don't think it's very effective. That's personal preference. So if you like PowerPoint, just know that the majority of my students that I've taught, they get lost, they lose interest, or they can't see you, you can't see them. It's just hard to interact with them if you're sharing your screen using PowerPoint. So what I do to get around that or use it in place of it is I use the chat box. Anything that I want to share with them, I can do it through the chat box. So if I've started my class and everybody's here and I'm introducing them and they've introduced me and I'm so grateful you're here, I go right into my lesson plan and I just begin to copy and paste. Here's my readiness scenario. So I go, imagine that. Guys, everybody, make sure your chat box is open and ready, and please refer to your chat box. When you see this quote in the chat box, please give me a thumbs up. And that way I know that they have been interacting with me because they are giving me the thumbs up, whether it be in person or they go here to More and they go to Gestures and they make sure that they give that thumbs up right in the chat box or right by their screen. So now I begin to teach. You guys, let's read this quote together, and I want you to pay attention as we read this. I use my look for questions. If you need to, please go into the previous lesson trainings and how to ask better questions and how to engage my students. It talks about the look for question. I have this up here utilizing the chat box. Then, after we've had this section where I see this, I invite them to answer specific questions in the chat box as well. Just one way to interact with them. So you guys, I have this question in the chat box. How confident would you be in answering Sylvia's question from this scenario before, and why? Please take 30 seconds, jump into your chat box right now and answer that. Then when they answer, it gives their name and their answer. So for example, Jessica says, I would feel, this. And so I have this right here and I have Jessica's answer. I'm like, okay, Jessica, I love what you put in the chat box. Let's talk about that just a second, or just elaborate. It's just different ways that I can interact with my students and still have them have a text visualization of what I'd like for them to do. Not only that, I have my key points that I want to bring up into my lesson right here, and my students don't even see it. I have a link right here. So if I click on this, it's going to bring me into this Kahoot lesson that I really like. I have this all set up while I'm teaching while I'm talking to my students, and that way I can go over here to my Zoom, and if I want to share my screen with my students, I can just make sure I hit share screen. It's going to be right there in front of me, and I have it all set up. I'm ready to go. So brothers and sisters, I would encourage you, if you would, to use the chat box in place of a PowerPoint so that you can still engage your students. Not only that, here's one thing that I like to do with my students as well that again keeps them engaged. Again, I have what I want them to do. I copy it, I place it in my chat box. You guys, we're going to reference some key phrases, and this is the activity that we're going to do for our lesson today. We are going to rewrite the doctrinal mastery passage in words that we use. So we have these doctrinal mastery passages, we have it in front of us. And so the students, we can have them do this in the chat box, or we can use the whiteboard feature. Again, go to More, and let's go to Whiteboard. So now we have a new whiteboard, and I hit Open and Collaborate. Now all of my students right here, they can come in and they can hit the text box, come over here, and they can start typing. So for John chapter 3, verse number 5, it's that Jesus talks about, you must be born of water and of the Spirit. We must be baptized. And they fill out their blank. And as soon as they hit return, their name, along with what they said, is right there. And that way, everybody's collaborating on the same screen, and yet I'm still engaging with them, and I can still see their pictures. I just love the way that we can engage in these ways instead of just using PowerPoint or sharing our screen completely. So once we're done with that whiteboard, you'll see at the very top here, we just hit Close Whiteboard. Now we're back to our screen and where we're at. So brothers and sisters, I'll go ahead and I will make myself a little bit bigger here. Those are a few of the ways that I like to interact with my students while I'm teaching over Zoom. I invite you to try a few of these practices out in your next Zoom or video conference class. And then please leave some feedback in the comments below. Right here in this YouTube video, if you go down to where it says More, there are comments. Please leave some comments on best practices that you have used while you have taught over Zoom or taught over Google Meet or whatever video conferencing software that you use. But yeah, leave some comments below about best practices, and let's make a great little interactive page here about best practices on how to teach over Zoom or teach over video chat.